So I won't go into too much detail, but I'm so excited to have Philip Stork here this morning, who's the CMO from Griffith University, and also Jamie Leonard, who's the Director of Marketing. And they're going to talk this morning about the evolution of their brand and of the Griffith University brand, the campaigns they've had in market over the last, 5 years or so, and what's made the campaign so impactful and so special. And part of that is, being authentic, being really authentic to the brand and who they are in market. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning, and the power of that kind of approach. So without further ado, I'll hand over. You've got a mic? No. All right. Brilliant. Welcome.
Excellent. Thanks, Kath. Yeah, can you hear me? Excellent. So I'll start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the lands we are, or the various lands on which we gathered, and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and pay any respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people here with us today. That's something really important to us at Griffith. We are a values-led institution, and respecting First Nations and seeing the value in First Nations is something that's really important to the university. It's also something that we therefore see going through our curriculum, and we'll sort of touch on that a little later, but it's certainly worth always starting our presentations with an acknowledgement of country, but actually meaning it, because I often go to presentations, they have a conversation, they go, yep, we do that at the beginning, but I think it's something that's fundamental to who we are at Griffith. And that sort of segues quite nicely into where Griffith came from. So Griffith was established under a piece of legislation in 1971 by the Queensland Parliament, and it was actually designed to be different. It was the second university in Brisbane at the time, and the second Queensland university, and it was actually founded to address some of the grand challenges that were there at the time. Fundamental to that were some of the things that it was committed to. So the ideas of equity, social justice, environmental sustainability. Now we hear those all the time. We hear about that. Every institution talks about it. Every organisation talks about those. But back in 1971, that was pretty unique. And it actually had 4 founding schools, and those founding schools were different to what you found at the Purple University that you're all aware of. Australian Environmental Studies, Modern Asian Studies, which was really out there for the time, Humanities and Science. And just to sort of show how out there the place was, these are some of the photos that we have in our archives. This is actually a lecture. This is actually people learning. This is not, and there are dozens and dozens of examples in our archive that talk about this. This is a sort of photo of one of the big cohorts there. You will notice the goat, the car door, the outrageous haircuts.
Bloke in a scuba diving mask.
Oh, there is a scuba diving mask too. Yeah. And it's interesting, we're currently going through a little bit of a process to look at the history of the university as we come up to our 50th anniversary as a operating university. And we hear about these founding cohorts that came through the university and really how they were pushing the boundaries and how unique they were and how they didn't wear shoes. But we hear all these sorts of things, and this is fundamental to how the university was structured. And we start to see some of these things coming through. We wear shoes now for workplace health and safety reasons, plus it's cold. But we actually do have, this is sort of how the courses were structured at the time. So in terms of the actual product, and we didn't call it product back then, the product was really different to what you'd find at other universities. It actually allowed people to bring together areas of interest and values. But it was a really small university. It was a very tiny university, but we've now grown to be a fully comprehensive university. We have over 45,000 students studying with Griffith, and that history there's a couple of things that have happened. In 1990, the Queensland Teachers College, which was at Marrickravett, became part of the university. That used to be something that was sort of run through the sort of TAFE system, but is now actually part of university education. In 1990, we also took over the TAFE campus on the Gold Coast, which then became part of the university, and it's now our largest physical campus. We also, in 1992, had the Queensland College of Art come in to the university. 1998, the Logan campus became part of the university, and that's our civic campus, our campus that's actually really deeply engaged with the university. In 2018, we actually developed a digital campus for the first time. We'd had a lot of online study, we were leading in online study, but actually created a digital campus. So the experience that a student gets on a physical campus, how can we make sure we wrap things around them in terms of what they're looking for as a digital campus? That was really, really lucky, because about 2 years later they were all studying online. But we were pretty well founded to do that. But you can see that there's significant growth, and one of the things that sort of came out of that growth is that we became a world-ranked university. And so it was relatively easy for a university to be ranked in the top 1,000 universities in the world. There's about 40,000 universities and higher education institutions worldwide. Griffith now sits in some rankings in the top 200 to 300 universities in the world, which really places us as the top 2% universities in the world. We actually have some programs that are number 1 in Australia, number 2 globally. So really actually moving to become a comprehensive university away from where that foundation was. We've got an MBA that's number 1 globally in a number of rankings, number 1 for law and criminology in Australia. So really seeing the importance of rankings. Rankings are really important for universities in terms of international recruitment, less so for domestic recruitment, but they're really important for international recruitment. And I mean, the demand-driven system, so I don't know how much people know about universities, but basically in 2012 the government said we're going to uncap places, which means you can have as many students as you can get, and we will fund that through the HELP, and at the time HECS system. And you can see since 2012 we've had continuous growth. You know, there's been a few choppy years. It wasn't so great in 2016. The last year hasn't been so great with, unfortunately, when the job market's so hot and Cass is so busy, universities do struggle a little bit. So we've seen a little bit of a dip. But you can actually see our market share has grown significantly over the last couple of years. And being a comprehensive university has been really helpful to us in doing that. Having the full program suite, having the opportunity for students to come in to study in almost every area except veterinary science. It's too expensive, and you only need one of those in Queensland. But what that actually has meant is that universities become a little homogenous. We all kind of look a little bit the same. And this is Glenn Davis, who was a Vice-Chancellor of Griffith University and is now, then went on to the University of Melbourne, Australia's number one ranked university. He's now also the Secretary of Prime Minister and Cabinet in Canberra, so pretty smart guy. But he wrote this book about the idea of the fact that all universities are really starting to look the same. And it doesn't matter what they do, they'll all start to look the same. I'm not sure I 100% agree with him. I can see that we've tried to do that. I see that universities have been dragged in that direction, but I actually think there is some real value in being distinctive. And in 2019, we had a new Vice-Chancellor, new leadership at the university, and I sat down with the Vice-Chancellor at that time. Jamie and I had lots of conversations about what we felt Griffith was. Jamie studied there, I've studied there. We really had a deep understanding of the university, and what we heard from the university was if QUT was the university for the real world and perhaps UQ was the university for the elite, maybe Griffith was the university that gives a shit. I tried to persuade the Vice-Chancellor to let me put billboards up. I wasn't allowed to, so we had to do a little bit more work. But the Vice-Chancellor, in consultation with the university, developed this strategy. And this strategy really brought forward all the things we'd heard at the institution over our time at Griffith. And the idea that we will educate talented students doesn't matter what their background. There are some institutions that are a little elitist that exclude students. That's not who we are. That's not the communities that we serve. That we aim to graduate students who are ethically sophisticated, contribute to work and society through values-based behaviour, those values coming through. It's the same messages we were hearing in 1975. Well, I wasn't hearing them, but in 1975 that were being heard. And that will undertake significantly socially relevant research to ensure that the future is one that brings benefit to us and as many people as possible. So this idea of creating a future for all people. And finally, that's all underpinned by our values, that we'll hold fast to our values, believing that they remain important if the future that we help create is one that is both just and equitable. So that's what's sat underneath the strategy. That's really been something that's guided the whole university in its decision making, but it's also helped guide the decisions we've made in terms of brand. Now, 2019 was a great time to launch a strategy, and then COVID hit. And we had a centralised marketing and recruitment and comms team of about 50 staff. And then the university had a whole range of other marketing and comms people that sat across the university. But we were facing a $700 million hole over 5 years in our budget because of the loss of, say, international students coming in, but other revenues, people not coming to campus, you actually do make some revenue from, retail and things like that on campus. So we had a $700 million hole. And the university made a decision to look at how we could tighten things up, sharpen things up. And one of the decisions we made was to centralise all marketing, comms and recruitment at the university. Reduce the staff numbers by a third. We were able to do that with very few redundancies, but actually mainly through ending contracts when they finished and things like that. So it was fairly bloodless. But centralising marketing and recruitment in a university is a challenging thing to do, centralising in any organisation, but a large organisation where there's a lot of independence in certain parts of the university becomes really challenging. So we had to build a centralised marketing and recruitment team built around a business partnering model. So that business partnering model means that we have people who are embedded with our colleagues or people we partner with. I hate that clients. My view is students are our clients, not staff. And we have these business partners who who drive the strategies of the local areas, but align that to the centralised strategy, and then allow them to come into the centres of excellence that we have in the central function. So they're able to access the marketing services, they're able to access the comms, the media team, those sorts of things. But we can manage the workload and demand in there. But we went from we went to a team of about 100, we went down to a team of about 110 marketing, comms, recruitment, and events professionals sitting in a centralised team. It also has meant we were able to lift the standard, set really high expectations, be able to put clear KPIs on what performance looks like. So it's been a really good exercise. I think. Some staff opted out, and that's fine. But actually, the majority of staff now feel a lot of pride in their work, and we do regular benchmarking surveys to understand how our staff are feeling in the marketing and comms space. And they really believe in the values of the institution. They believe they're valued by the institution, and they believe in the work that they're doing. And for me, I think you've won when you've achieved that. But then the world has changed quite a lot. I mentioned before the idea that it was unique in 1975, and I'm going to hand over to Jamie now to talk about the fact that the times right now suits Griffith.
You can drive?
You could drive.
Okay, cool. So as Philip said, the university was really distinct when it started, and in fact, in that it was originally scoped as the south side campus of UQ, but the government at the time decided, no, we need a different experience, we need a different solution to the problems of the time. And as that growth happened, that made us comprehensive, but we lost that sense of distinctiveness. So in 2019, with that strategy, we started to see the opportunity to look, that distinctiveness that might have been diluted over time, there's an opportunity there for us to kind of grab some of that back. We were really encouraged to see what was in that strategy. But a lot of good things sit in strategic plans and don't see the light of day. So we thought, okay, we need to consult back to the organisation and say, can we look to externalise this? So we started to bring a bit of external and market context and play that back to the organisation. Yeah, this phrase, "the times will suit us." This slide was actually put together in February 2020. So we had bushfires in Australia. There was a banking royal commission. Greta Thunberg was the Time Person of the Year, and people started having to wear masks in Wuhan. We thought, well, do you know what? It feels like the things that we've always held dear, the things that Griffith values, are things that are becoming more important than ever, and are starting to become more and more relevant. So we played that external context back to the exec and said, look, it feels like the time might be right for us. And also we're hearing it from our students and our partners. This is some verbatims that kind of captured what Griffith's all about. Partners and students were really clear on what Griffith stood for. So this is some student feedback here. Griffith is such cultural diversity, the acknowledgement and inclusion of Indigenous Australians, progressive values. There's one on the other side. Student well-being and mental health, not just academic success. So the students are really clear on why they belong to the community, and we're telling that back to us. And also, there's a really nice, our partners, our industry partners, our government partners, they were almost imploring Griffith to own what they knew it already stood for in terms of its values. So align with the values and tell it well. These are some verbatims here. Building a really strong relationship with Griffith in the sustainability space. That positive culture grounded in doing good and advancing society is a lived value of Griffith and not evident at blank and blank universities. And our culture distinguishes it from its rivals. So we were being told by our stakeholders, this is you. Can you own this? And there was an extremely challenging phrase in that we were a well-meaning introvert, and that may have been our problem. We kind of knew who we were. Were we going to own that story and tell it?
Yeah, and this reminds me, the other thing that we talked about at the time was that we effectively had a UQ light strategy. So we were going to be something like UQ. We were almost as good as UQ. That is a terrible, terrible proposition. And you're almost as good, but you're a bit introverted. You're actually ignoring the values that you do. Not ignoring them, but just hiding them. The values that actually you get from your staff, your students say they want, those sorts of things. So that's exactly where we've been. It worked for a while. The numbers show that it worked for a while, but it's probably not going to be sustainable.
Part of the conversation Philip had with our incoming VC was that the university you can inherit is not necessarily reflecting the way it positions itself to the outside world, and the culture is very much around these values. That photo you saw originally with the guy with the welding mask and the scuba diving mask and the goat, I'm not sure about how the goat got on, but that guy in the welding mask may still work at Griffith and still fervently believes in those values. So the culture is still there, and there was some criticism of marketing and comms that we're not telling our story well. Okay, well, we accept some of that, but also maybe we're not owning what that story is. And that was what we really wanted to kind of grasp that opportunity. So we literally went and had a meeting with the exec group and said, okay, we'd like to get some consensus on where we think we sit as a university in terms of our position. We found this diagnostic tool worked really well, and this might help you guys in your areas. This kind of helps you map your centrality of your distinctiveness, and I might spend a little bit of time talking about this. And we mapped Griffith against this. So this is how you look in the sector. There's your mainstream, and I might talk about cars if that's okay, to kind of contextualize. The mainstream is the brand that really dictates the norms of the market. In Australia over a number of years, it's probably Ford and Holden. In the aspirational space, they're the highly differentiated brands with wide appeal, but not readily available normally on a financial or exclusivity basis. So Mercedes. In the mainstream area, your strategy is probably to set and meet the expectations of the market. In the aspirational area,
very Toyota.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're going to, in the aspirational, that's about exclusive and premium, and something we discussed. Over time, I think University of Queensland may have kind of established the norms of the market in Queensland universities, but has become more premium. And I think due to its massive success, QT probably moved into that mainstream and started to dictate this is what your expectations of a university should be. Then there's unconventional. If you think about cars, that's Tesla. They rewrite the rules of the game. They're deliberately different. By their nature, they're going to be smaller, but they're very distinct. And then finally, in that left-hand quadrant, that's your peripheral brands. That's really a Me Too strategy. In car terms, they are hugely successful, but they're the people that take the technology of the mainstream and make it a bit cheaper and a bit more available to the market. So that's probably where Toyota started and Hyundai and Kia are, but Toyota basically made that into the mainstream. So we tested this with the exec and said, where do we see we are? And we had a little punt ourselves and said, okay, back in 1975, Griffith probably started way out over in that top left-hand corner. We were deliberately designed to be unconventional. Philip sort of walked you through the story up to 2020. We became large. We became comprehensive. And we did fantastically well.
And that is the only way to describe that is UQ Lite.
So where do we want to be in 2025? We have this peripheral. We can become bigger. We can keep up in those rankings, and we can become less light. I don't know, but anyway, more like the others.
Denser? I don't know. Yeah.
Do we want that? Do we want that, or do we want to reclaim that unconventional, that kind of differentiated ground? But the key thing in that unconventional area, you can't just be different for being different. You've got to be distinctive. So you've got to have the quality, the great career outcomes to students, but also you can see the lens a little bit differently and bring some distinction to it. And we wanted to get consensus. It was in the strategic plan. It was in the culture of the university, but was that consensus among the leadership? And we got consensus. We want to reclaim that unconventional, that kind of, that niche, that differentiation, distinctiveness that we started with. We want to bring that back. So that was a huge outcome for us in terms of, okay, set the direction. We've got it in the plan. Now can we externalize it? And academics are always looking at academic references. We have a non-academic reference, which is Judy Garland. We thought, finally, we can be a first-rate version of ourselves rather than a second-rate version of somebody else. And that's what we wanted to do. Let's tell our story the best way we can. Let's not compare ourselves to others. Let's own our story and do it as well as we can. So we wanted to test that. We started by putting together a bit of an internal video that we felt captured the essence of what that brand might be. And we roadshowed this around the university. So this isn't external. You won't have seen this anywhere, but we thought we might share it with you.
It started as a spark, a bold idea. Create a different kind of university. A university to challenge old conventions and pioneer new solutions. A community united by values, built on justice, sustainability, inclusivity, a commitment to reconciling with Australia's First Peoples. This was important 50 years ago. Today, it's more important than ever, committing everything we have to create a brighter future for all. Through education, where talented students of all backgrounds can get the skills and opportunities to make their difference. Through research, where exceptional thinkers from diverse disciplines come together to find solutions to the key challenges of our time. And through partnerships based on shared purpose that improve lives and create lasting outcomes in our communities, in our countries, in our world. Because what began as a bold idea is now a global community of over 300,000 students, staff, and alumni. United by values, united by purpose, united by a commitment that began almost 50 years ago to create a future that is just and equitable. Doing the things that matter today to create a brighter future for all.
Forums around the university, and the first time we tested it with some executive leaders, one of the vice chancellors says, I worked at Griffith 30 years, that's why I joined, that's why I stay, that's Griffith. So we knew that it felt like we reclaimed or got the vibe of a few things that we lost. So we started to turn that into external work and into what you now see in our student recruitment work around Make It Matter. Make It Matter to future students is around a call to action. Australia has a number of great universities. Queensland has three. Brisbane has 3 great universities. You'll achieve a great outcome at all of them. But if you also want to make a great impact, then it was a call to action that Griffith's the place for you. So you might just want to quickly play our ad on the next slide.
When you go to Griffith University, it's about more than making it. It's about making it matter.
Because protecting this matters.
Healthy kids matter.
For me, it's about doing something that I love.
Standing up for what's right matters.
Creativity matters.
Because the decisions we make today matter.
If you want to be part of a brighter future, don't just make it matter.
So that's what it's all about. If you want to make an impact, this is the university. If there's a values alignment, you're our kind of student, we want you to be part of our community. We use Griffith alumni, Griffith students to make all our work. And the talent in there are all Griffith students and grads. I want to just play a story here. This is a guy called Dean Clifford Jones, who was Young Australian Lawyer of the Year. And this is his story.
The photograph is about understanding that the law is there to protect you and also connect you with your community. At a number of stages in the legal profession, haven't felt like I belonged. I don't want to feel like that, and I don't want others to feel like that. I started Pride in Law to help people to see themselves in the legal profession. Wearing the Pride in Law badge, it makes me feel that I may be making a difference and making someone think that they can be included. I wouldn't be sitting here today if I didn't study at Griffith University. It changed my life. Respect, acceptance, and love. That's what matters to me.
I work now. We put across our quality, we put across our outcomes, but also the lens through which we see the values. So we try and make sure in all our work the values of either diversity of inclusion, sustainability, social justice, and the reconciliation and advancement of Indigenous Australians comes through. There's some great feedback here in terms of verbatims on that campaign and on Dean's story. But this started in 2021. The key thing now is delivering that brand experience through both the promise and the proof. And one of the risks of any value-based strategy is you set the bar very high for yourself. You set yourself a high level of accountability in terms of your actions and behaviours, and you're as strong as your weakest link. So we have to walk the talk. So the work we're doing, this is only the start of the journey for us. We've made the promise. It's all over Griffith at the moment in terms of its culture and a lot of its work. But now how do we kind of hardwire and embed that through the experience of the university? We see it from the students now, but how do we make sure that's part of a structured experience they get through their journey and their life at Griffith? And we use our students as co-designers and participants in that process. So this is all around how do we incorporate Griffith's values into the student experience, asking the students, what would you like to see? How would you like that to come to life in your education? So the student experience, you'll see some work over the next coming years, we all around how do we embed those values, that mission into our student experience so that they can make the impact that they want to make. And it goes further than that. The nature of university is learning, research, and partnerships. So there's our learning. In the research area, we've funded some major research centres around climate action, disability and injury rehabilitation, and preventing violence. They're all values aligned to that strategy. And in the partnership space, we recently signed an agreement with the Commonwealth Bank, not only for student opportunities, but also to set up an academy to address financial crime. So again, in our engagement and our partnerships, keep aligning it back to those values. So we're very conscious that we made that promise. We have to prove it day by day in what we do. So that's where we've been. That's our journey. We thought we might leave you with a few kind of in summary points of what we found over the journey. It's difficult, almost impossible to reposition a brand. And this is something we kept talking to the university about. Don't consider this a repositioning. Consider this a modernisation of our founding positioning. we are who we are. Our audience know who we are. We live in the minds of our customers and our stakeholders. We've got to be the best version of that university. Let's not compare ourselves to others. Let's be the best that we can be to be ourselves. Within that, identify the competitive advantage. So it's not good. You can't just be different for different's sake. How do you prove the points of parity around outcomes and quality, but then differentiate yourself and make yourself distinctive based on those values? Philip spoke about this, aligning the vision, the culture, the organization, and the leadership. The culture was there. It needed the leadership to embrace it and lead it along.
And the leadership of the university has really embraced marketing, is probably the best way of putting it, and not the colouring in department, as I think we were probably treated about 5 years ago. In fact, I had heard us called the colouring in department about 5 years ago. And so now when we have conversations about any of the topics at the university, when we have conversations about research funding and all sorts of stuff, marketing and comms are part of that conversation. So my position sits on the executive of the university. So when we're having debates about wild and wonderful things that universities have debates over, they do have a marketing and comms view on that all the way through. And it isn't the colouring in department, it's the whatever we're up to now, 56 P's of marketing. So,
and then it's really important to align your brand and your business metrics. So we saw how we had quality. We're so proud of our global rankings, but equally we now look at impact rankings, social impact rankings. We've brought our carbon neutrality target ahead from 2050 to 2029. We have a values-based procurement strategy in terms of how we work with our supply chain and our partners. So we now redefine how we measure success in the business as well based on those values. Deliver consistently through promise and proof. Consistency is the key. Okay, how do we make sure that in everything we do, you see that clear alignment back to those values and the mission of the university? And this is one that we are happily say that Griffith may not have done in the past, is stay the course. Okay, it takes a generation to do this well in universities because you have to embed it through the student experience. That cohort of students need to see it, and then eventually their children might come back to the university because of that experience. So stay the course, persist. Changes of leadership might want to change direction, but hopefully supply the evidence back that this is us, and it's about being the best version of the brand you can be. I think that's us.
That is. So we just wanted to open up for any questions people had on any aspect.
Hi. Hello, Matt.
Hi. Matt, I'm at Economic Development Queensland now, but full disclosure, I'm about to go be CMO of Charles Sturt University in New South Wales, so I'll be very interested in watching this presentation. That's fantastic. Love everything you're doing. I had a question around extending that brand proposition into places like TikTok, where I was just having a quick scroll there and seeing memes like, us trying to, this is a funny one around, our millennial boss trying to get us to post an April Fool's prank on TikTok and us not really caring because we just want to post memes. How do you extend this incredible brand proposition throughout the whole team when you've got particularly young people posting on TikTok and just a desire to just churn through interesting stuff there?
I think it's when you have the conversation. Every time we have a conversation, whether that's at the executive table or whether it's somebody deciding to post something, is how does this align with our values? And making sure that's fundamental to everything that we do. That doesn't mean that we're not going to do something fun on TikTok, and in fact we'd be insane not to. We've now got the largest engagement in TikTok of any university in Queensland, and probably the largest growing in Australia. So you've got to meet the market where it is, and you've got to have conversations, but you need to make sure the values are aligned. And the number of times we've had ideas come to us for TikTok and we've gone, it's brilliant, we love it, but not for us. And that's okay to do that.
Can I just add something to that? Like, we live in a participation economy now, so the students want to participate in the brand and in the university. They are the best people to represent us on those channels. We're the dad on the dance floor, right? Well, maybe I just stand for, So, yeah, it's about helping them participate and empowering them to represent us as well.
Anyone else got a question?
I think when you have an authentic brand, people went, oh God, this is what we've wanted for years. And it's interesting, Griffith has had an unhelpful history of switching taglines and mixing its student recruitment campaign with its brand proposition. We've been remarkable. What else have we done?
I don't like to talk about it.
Okay, right. So we've done lots of things, and they've been highly tactical. But then when we go and have a conversation with an academic, they'll mock it. They don't mock this. They actually throw it back at the university's face sometimes, because academics have academic freedom, and sometimes they throw things back quite hard. But actually, it means that when you have a conversation, you can say, does this matter? Are we doing something that matters here? Does it align with our values? Simply.
Part of that Judy Garland quote about being the first-rate version of yourself, that's what people were asking us to do. We'd spent I think could have been guilty in the past of maybe presenting ourselves how we thought the market might want us to look, or presenting ourselves the way that we thought we were compared to others. This was about just taking who we are and supercharging it and being proud of it. So the actual consensus in the university was pretty good, because they'd been asking us to do it for a while, and say that's why the conversation with the new VC when she set that strategy coming in was so important, because to understand this is the culture and this is what we think we should own.
Not necessarily in execution, but in what underpins it, absolutely. So I think the worst thing you can do is campaign by committee. I will always discourage campaign by committee. That's where campaigns go to just become beige. So don't ever do that. But when you've got anything like this, you've got to make sure that what sits behind it is really solid. That everybody will go, yep, I can see where my input went into that.
Actually, it was the Vice-Chancellor when asked about previous brand positioning in the town hall, made a really good point, said taglines come and go. It's the substance and the content that sit behind it that matters. So I think we got a bit of both at the moment, which is great.
Hang on, I'll give you the mic so that everyone online can hear you.
I just wanted to touch on, because I noticed that I guess like part of your core values was politics. I guess like as a brand and in this like day and age, it can be such a sensitive topic to talk about. How do you guys find as a brand in trying to stay relevant and also like make sure that you're talking about these issues without accidentally damaging the brand?
Yeah,
I was going to lock yourself in. There we go.
So the academic freedom thing that I talked about before, that is fundamental to all universities. All universities, it's actually enshrined in legislation that academics have academic freedom. So if it's in their area of expertise, they can provide commentary on anything. They can say, I don't think the university's going well. They can say that publicly. They can say that on the front page of the Courier Mail. They can say that on the front page of the Oz. They can do that challenge Channel 9. If it's within their area of expertise. They also have freedom of speech. So they're things that are enshrined in our enterprise agreement and in legislation. So politics is always there. But we actually don't talk politics. We don't talk left or right. We talk about the issues and the values. So, for example, very recently the university put out a very firm statement on The Voice saying that the university supported the change to the Constitution as outlined in the Voice referendum. Very clearly put that out there. It's in that statement we also said we respect the fact that there will be people in our institution who don't agree with that. There'll be some people who think no, sovereignty was never ceded and we should be going for a treaty line. There'll be some people who think no, we shouldn't be changing the Constitution at all. So they will have all those views within the university. But through a consultation process with our academic committee, we have a reconciliation advisory group. We also have a First Peoples Knowledge Holders and Elders advisory board. They advised the university that this is what we should do. We consulted widely. We did some surveys, and we came out with a position, and it was a really strong position. So sometimes you do have to make those values-based statements. That doesn't mean we're saying this party this or that party that. You know, we're not making commentary on the parties, and in fact, universities shouldn't do that. But we do mean that when it's aligned to our values, we should make a statement around it. You know, a couple of years ago, people would have said you can't talk about climate change. Now we have a climate action beacon, which is a research area funded by the university or kickstarted by the university. It actually gets a lot of money from external places now that focuses on climate action. 10 years ago, you couldn't have had that.
Thanks. Cass from CSIRO. And I'll declare potential conflicts. I'm a university alum from Griffith, environmental science, but also former staff member at QUT and UQ, so another space a little bit. And I'm really excited about you guys being able to use TikTok because we can't go anywhere near it. So
we do have to have separate devices for it. It's really painful.
Yeah, our team would love to use it, but no go. A little bit across from and it's interesting you're mentioning sort of climate because certainly when I was doing my science degree, that was front and centre, and yeah, shoes were optional except in the labs, so that wasn't that long ago. I'm not that old. I was actually interested in terms of the University Accord and what's going through at the moment, and it's interesting you mentioned Glenn Davies and positioning there. Where are you seeing the future and the positioning for universities, in particular Griffith University, going forward, knowing what's being put forward as propositions with the University Accord and what could be coming at you in the next year or two?
So for those who don't know what the University Accord is, it's effectively, we talked about 2012 when there was a really big shake-up of universities. It's the largest shake-up of universities in a decade. The government has effectively called for has funded a review of how universities operate, how they're funded, their business models effectively. And I think there are lots of things that can change that will change for the positive. I think there will be a focus on inclusion. Let's be honest, the government aren't going to throw lots and lots and lots more money at universities, so it'll actually probably drive some of that distinctiveness. I think that's probably going to be one of the outcomes. So I think some of that comprehensive homogeneity might start to be eroded under the Accord, and I think that would be a good thing.
Thanks. I love the line that you were given there about being a well-meaning introvert as sort of like a brand persona there. Is there anything that you're working towards or trying to claim some territory as a brand persona now? Or you're leaning into that?
No, definitely not. I think that was something that the university wasn't proud of, actually. And we'd rather have a sort of warts and all conversation with you. I think that's changed a lot. Looking at some of the major industry partnerships, so that was some industry feedback that we've had over the last 3 years. We've got a major partnership with Sanofi and UQ. We have a major partnership with CBA that Jamie mentioned around cybercrime. We've now got our performing arts students working in QPAC, so they study. They're studying in the same place as the people that they are aspiring to be. So those sorts of partnerships weren't there 5 years ago, and that's actually from moving away from being introverted. We're still well-meaning, we've still got good values, but actually we don't have to hide ourselves. So I think that's really shifted.
We have one theme that I think captures that quite well. Griffith has got a pretty modest culture, and so us being bombastic and being out, it wouldn't necessarily fit with the culture. So it's about doing that in a way that's sensitive to the culture and raising it up without over claiming. One of our themes and our tone of voice is around being excellent but not elitist. So that's where we try and position that. So excellence but not elitism, because we were built on inclusion and not exclusion.
Anyone else?
How much of this was driven by the new VC? Because sometimes change in the leadership of all leadership can drive, I won't say refresh or repositioning, but sometimes it can drive it. And is that the history of the brand?
So a couple of things I think that are worth saying on it. The strategy was driven by the feedback from staff, absolutely. I'd say the new Vice-Chancellor was pretty keen for a step up from being a well-meaning introvert. So I think definitely that's something she is. But it was one of the first conversations that we had with her was around where we thought the brand should go. And I don't think we've moved too far. I still don't get to say shit in an ad. But apart from that, I think it's something that we'd said we needed to find a way of expressing the experience of staff and students that we were hearing feedback on all the time that wasn't a UQ Light strategy.
That's why that matrix was a really good exercise to do in a physical meeting with the exec to check on a consensus. And there was one meeting literally where somebody said, "Why do we have to be distinctive? Why can't we just be good?" And that was the tension. We'd become good by all measures over a number of years, but maybe it conflicted with being distinctive. So those conversations were fed into the VC on her way in and through her consultation, but also, in rooms and in meetings.
Anyone else? Just conscious of time. All right, we might make this the last one.
I know you said that international students really look at the rankings. Do they also, have as much importance as domestic students on your core values and morals and ad campaigns that go out? Have you noticed?
I think they want the student experience. I don't think necessarily what we've looked at, and we've had lots of conversations with our colleagues who work in international recruitment, is how making it matter can apply both on an individual level and then scale up to a huge community level. But certainly what we know from students is, and Heidi will be able to tell you this is one of our partners in Navitas, is that international students want to make a huge impact on their family. They want to make a huge impact on the communities that they've come from. And so that component of the brand absolutely speaks to them. So it depends on what country as well. So I think those things are a challenging tension.
So I'm just conscious of getting you away from Helen. Ruth, last question.
So when you said it's really important to stay the course, do you think over time you will get pressure to pivot and do something else and try something different?
I think that's only natural. A university is full of opinions, but I think where we got to now, and we're doing some really interesting work, is we're doubling down and we're going deeper into this. So how can we redefine or more clearly articulate our values, like I said, through the experience, through the research we do. So it's going to be it's always been in the DNA of the university. Now it's going to be embedded through its operations and its curriculum and the experience. So there will always be pressure to maybe pivot, and changes of leadership quite often precipitate that. But I think where we're going now, it's been so well received, and the programs have worked to embed it in the product, in the experience, in the research. It's going to be manifest all over the university, so it's going to be a hard one to, even if you wanted to. The campaigns may change, but the truth of the mission and the truth of the values are going to remain, I think.
Yeah, I think it would be a very brave new leader who came in and said, I'm going to completely gut the institution. So I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think the University Council would look for that in terms of recruiting. So, say our Vice-Chancellor, I don't know if she wins the lottery and decides to go live in the Bahamas, I don't think that the council would actually do that, because the council are bought into those values. The conversations they have are driven by values. So I actually don't think that you'd see the significant change. But we will see change in terms of there's been a lot of pressure on Jamie and me to make sure that we keep delivering, and that we keep driving. There are commercial components to the university. Sadly, that's the bit that we have to deal with and drive new revenue into the university. It's a $1 billion institution. $500 million of that is through domestic student revenue. So we have to generate that $500 million of student revenue. So.
Thanks, guys. Thank you both so very much. Give them a round of applause. Thank you. That was a bloody good presentation. I'm so surprised. No, I'm just kidding.
Me too.
Well, I think everyone probably agrees, but you certainly walk out of this room today getting a real sense of the Griffith brand and what it's about. So, and that's what this whole session is about: is showcasing brands, showcasing the great work they've done. So, it was just such a pleasure having you both and listening to that this morning. So, thank you so much. And yes, and I can attest, the culture that you've built internally too within the team comes through there. That sort of excellence, not elitist. And that's what I get the sense of. That's what it's like to work there as well. So it really comes through the employer culture as well, having placed people in your team. Okay, so I'm conscious of getting everyone off to work. It's just before 9:00. Thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm hoping to see you all at the next one, which will be in a couple of months' time after the new fin year. Thank you to everyone who joined us online. Stick around, have something to eat, have a chat if you wish. But yeah, I understand everyone's got to get to work. So enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you again.